Welcome to the third elective, and welcome to Cairns and Brisbane as well, as we're live across 3 sites now. Do you know, Alana, what Phil, you and I have in common? We're all wearing Hope socks. Wonderful. I don't know if you're wearing your Hope socks out there, but they're excellent. We're so happy to have Phil Inglis share about Jesus-centred online community and just a little bio on him. Major for Inglis Faith Communities Development Team. Phil and his wife Rebecca have been Salvation Army officers for nearly 20 years. Phil entered training college with a background in science and IT and added to this many years of formal study in mission, theology and biblical studies.
At the beginning of 2022, Phil was given 2 appointments. The first is to the Faith Communities Development Team, where he works to help the Salvation Army establish and grow online ministries. His second appointment is to Moreland Corps in Melbourne, where he is really enjoying being involved in a corps that is growing its own Jesus-centred online community. Welcome, Phil. We look forward to hearing from you today.
Did you hear him say, ooh? Welcome.
Got a cheer. Well, thank you. Welcome to all of you to beautiful Rockhampton. To those of you in Cairns and Brisbane, we wish you were here, but the weather is better here anyway, so we're happy. But welcome to all of you. It's great to have you with us. As was said, I've been an officer in this Salvation Army for nearly 20 years. I've been a corps officer, I've been a divisional youth secretary, and the whole time I've been a geek. This is our tech desk at Wollongong at some point during COVID. So I'm sure I had a lot of fun with that. And that was mainly our technical director who did all of that, but I gave him permission and encouraged him and had a lot of fun with that. That was the after photo. I came to the Salvation Army from the world of IT. I was working at IBM on the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games team. And since that time, I've always been passionate about tech, but I'm also passionate about presenting the gospel. So I've developed twin disciplines, if you like, in my life around preaching and around AV production, and hopefully find ways of melding the two of those. Yes, up until last year, my wife and I were the corps officers in Wollongong. Where's a picture of Rebecca? Am I doing this right? There we are. There we go. Now we are in Melbourne, as you can see there in Hosier Lane. But we were the corps officers in Wollongong for a number of years, and we'd been live streaming our services for 6-something years, even before COVID came along. Wollongong Corps had a thriving video ministry for about 25 years before we got there. So I absolutely loved walking into that space. But then COVID struck and, the world went into lockdown, particularly Melbourne and Sydney, and THQ came looking for Corps to provide that Jesus-centred online community for salvos across Australia. And because North Brisbane and Wollongong were already live streaming, we were nominated to provide that online community, which we enjoyed. And suddenly our online live stream went from 6 people each week to a few thousand. And they were challenging times. So I thought I'd throw up a photo of us there, doing some live recording before some of the restrictions came even stronger. But we did manage to get some filming in before we did that. So Wollongong joined with North Brisbane as existing corps who live streamed. And as I said, we suddenly went to many thousands of views each week. The Territory then started to identify other corps alongside the different divisional commanders, and they nominated a corps each from each state, and the Salvation Army Territory tried to support that and develop those corps as well. But the coolest thing was, and it has to be, well, before I go, it has to be said that New South Wales and Queensland led the way and still does. Yeah, give yourselves a hand. At the same time as THQ was doing all this sort of stuff, promoting existing live streams and things, Core and Expressions across the country were building infrastructure, resources, and the expertise needed to provide this kind of online community for their people. I know many officers and leaders and tech people who watched hours and hours of YouTube tutorial videos on how to do this, how to work OBS, how to film with a camera, how to get lights to work and all that sort of thing. How to make yourself look more beautiful as you preach. And all those sorts of interesting tutorial videos. It was fun though, as a tech head, to watch people who had previously not been involved much in online video production or online church community fly up these really steep learning curves in a matter of weeks and months. And it was just so heartening to see incredible work going on. I know it was very difficult for a lot of people, but it really was amazing to see. Well, the result of all of this is that, as spoken before, I now have 2 jobs. And I am reveling in that. I'm enjoying myself immensely. I'm a corps officer and I get to preach and I get to lead at a fabulous corps in the northern suburbs of Melbourne. And I'm a member of the Territorial Faith Communities Development Team. So the Faith Communities Development Team, for those of you who don't know, which is pretty much most of us, is that it is basically a set of consultants who exist to help corps grow and thrive in different areas and aspects. Particularly in my case, I'm here to help corps grow and thrive in the world of online faith communities. So, my first task in my territorial job was to find out what's happening. COVID is kind of slackening off, or we thought it was particularly, but anyway, it was slackening off and lockdowns have ended. What is happening in the Salvation Army, in the world of live streaming and online faith community? So I did some research. Anyone want to hear some statistics? Who loves statistics? Statistics say about 80% of people love statistics. So there you go. The Salvation Army in Australia has 279 corps. Did anyone know that? Is that more or less than you thought? Yeah, well, it depends on who you ask at THQ. They didn't know much either. So 279 is the number that I have come up with, and I have asked every single AO in the country how many corps they have. So unless the AOs don't know, you know. There you go. 279 corps across Australia. 235 of those corps have Facebook pages or groups. Is that a lot higher than most people thought? Most people I tell that to, they think, oh, that's a lot higher than I thought. 235 corps-based Facebook pages and groups. There could be a number of others because some corps started up their own private groups, and so we don't know what those are like. Now, there's also 59 video streaming channels. That's including YouTube and Vimeo and one other corps which is using some strange proprietary thing. Right? Anyway, righto, there you go. And there's also a bunch of corps who use Zoom and utilise Zoom. Out of those 235 corps that have Facebook pages and groups, there are 158,000 followers. That's a lot, right? That's a fairly big congregation. Now, I will admit that out of that many of them are duplicated, right? So I don't know about you, but I follow a bunch of these different... Actually, I follow all of them now because I found them all. But I don't know about you. Most of you would probably follow more than one or two. But even if we count half of those as duplicates, that's a congregation of 80,000 people in Australia who follow our core. That's not the others page. That's not the PR pages. That's not the national page of the Salvation Army. That is our core, our Jesus-centred faith communities. That's incredible. And I'm very, very excited by that. During COVID, peak live streaming frenzy, as I said, we went from a handful of core that were live streaming prior to COVID to 101 core who were live streaming, producing regular video content for their online communities. Things for people to engage with online. That's an incredible amount of growth. And post-COVID, I just had an email from an AO down in New South Wales saying one of their core has decided to stop live streaming, but we still have, so we had 101 during early 2021. It's now down to about 70 core that are still live streaming. Considering that's gone from a handful to there, and there are 4 other core, one in Perth, one in Melbourne, and 2 in Sydney, who are looking to start live streaming, and I'm working with them on budgets and cameras and positions and lighting and all that sort of stuff. So, which is my consultant role. So 74 core are looking to produce regular content with which people in their community can engage. That is amazing. So the lesson that I learned in looking at all of this is that during COVID, while many of our, or the majority of our physical doors were closed, our ministry grew. Our reach grew. Our influence grew. Our Jesus was made real to people. It was incredible. And I'm very excited. So let's take a quick break, splitting into a few people per, 2 or 3 people. We're going to have a few minutes to break, and we'll ask question number 1. Is your core or faith community involved in online ministry? Do you have a Facebook page? Do you have a YouTube channel? Do you post this? Do you not? Why or why not? What does it look like? Just spend a couple of minutes telling something to the people around you. Find someone who's not from your core. Maybe that would help. They already know the answers. Okay. We'll bring you back. We'll have more time to chat a bit later on. Some good discussions going on there, and I hope it was all around answering that question. So obviously, I am an advocate for developing Jesus-centered online community. Let me tell you why. I want to share you some statistics from the ACMA, McCrindle Research, and try and explain to you just how much the internet matters, in case, you've been living under a rock. 99% of Australians, according to the ACMA, use the internet. 99%. I've spoken to a number of core officers who've said, I've got these many people on my core who don't use email, don't have computers. Well, they're part of the 1% of the Australian population. 75% of Australians use use social media regularly. 65% of Australians are on Facebook. The average Australian uses 4 devices to connect to the internet. That's the average Australian. Think about that for a second. Do you use 4 devices to connect to the internet? Yeah. Phones, iPads, computers, watches, fridges, televisions mostly are connected. Actually, when you stop to think about it, the internet connects so much of our lives, and that proportion is growing. Let's talk about young people. Over 80% of students are on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat. And yes, despite dwindling numbers, almost all of them are on Facebook as well. Of all websites, however, Google may be the most visited, but to be honest, we don't spend that much time on Google, do we? You look for something, then you're off somewhere else. The website on which people spend most amount of time is, surprise, surprise, YouTube. Yeah? YouTube is ridiculous in so many ways. Let me talk about YouTube. Every minute, over 500 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube. Every minute, 500 hours is uploaded to YouTube. Every day, over 1 billion, that's billion with a B, 1 billion hours of YouTube video is watched. Every 24 hours, 1 billion hours of video is watched. Now, the average visit to YouTube is 21 minutes. So if we take that figure and we combine it with the figure of 1 billion hours a day, we can see that in a 24-hour period, the equivalent of nearly half the human population of planet Earth has watched YouTube. Isn't that crazy? YouTube is ridiculous. 67% of kids believe, and that is, just preface, this statistic comes from 2018, so the number has grown. 67% of kids believe that anything they need to learn about life, they can learn from YouTube. Yeah? Some of you are nodding like it's not just kids who think that, it's me too. See, now more than ever, right now, the internet is where people go to learn about life. It's where they learn about society, about sexuality, and about spirituality. These things that people learn online inform their decisions and direct their lives. And I don't think I need to tell you, but a lot of information online is just crap. Yeah? Come on, hands up. Who's actually Googled symptoms and looked for medical advice? Yeah. You're all very healthy looking, so that's okay, but think about social media though, or think about internet pornography, right? The internet pornography industry makes so much money. It is incredibly huge. The internet pornography media, the industry makes more money than Netflix, Google, Amazon, Apple. There's one other. Combined. combined. It is insane, the stuff that is online. Internet gambling is not that far behind. Particularly the ACMA in one of their reports reported that the 15th thing in life that grew on the internet during lockdown was the purchasing of scratchies. Yeah. Apparently you can buy them online. I'm a salvo officer, I don't know. I don't know if you can put those in the collection bag like you used to get at the pubs, right? Only if it's a winner, that's right. We must be Jesus-centered sources of light and life. Luke 14:24. We got that text up? Let me tell you why you're here. You are here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavours of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and you'll end up in the garbage. We are here to be salt and light. Okay, let's take some time to reflect for a moment and have a question. It's a bit of a fun question. What are some of the things you think people learn from the internet about life, relationships, sexuality, community, and faith that are just wrong and harmful? Or perhaps you might like to share with the people around you the most stupid and toxic thing you've seen shared on the internet. Can anyone think of anything like that? Anything really dumb and stupid? Anyway, take a couple of moments and talk among yourself. We'll have a couple of minutes and then we'll come back. That was quick. Hi, we're back. I hope you're having fun, and we've just been talking about the toxicity of the internet, and there's a number of people, someone here, and I'm sure there's many of you who know people who are just not on social media. It's just a bit too toxic, and that's fine. But we, as a community of faith, need to have representation there, don't we? See, I am passionate about building online faith communities. So, along I come, right? For 20 hours a week, right? Because for the other 20 hours a week, I'm supposed to be a corps officer. And for this 20 hours a week now, I am the person at territorial headquarters who is supposed to try and help 279 corps with 235 Facebook pages, nearly 78 or whatever it is YouTube channels. I'm supposed to help these people develop their online Jesus-centered communities. Bryce Davies once said something that I really relate to in this space. He said, I feel like a mosquito in a nudist colony. You know, I know what I'm supposed to do, but where do I start? So, okay, get rid of those mental images. Dearie me, people. So in preparing for this seminar, I called in my friends. I called out to my tech head friends. I called out to the media and PR social media team. I called out to the lecturers in theology and mission at EBC. And I said, all right, I'm doing this seminar for Queensland's mission conference. What should I tell them? And I will say, some of them came back and said the Blues are going to win next time, but they all gave me some things to share with you, and I've condensed them down. You should have a handout there with the 10 tips. And so we'll just spend a little bit of time going through all of these. Now, before we do, I'll give you a bit of a proviso, a bit of a disclaimer. I don't always do all of these things. Yeah? I wish I did. But I am also a corps officer. I know there is a lot to do. I know that a lot of what I'm going to say in these tips, you may not feel like you have time or energy to think about. But I hope that something in here will stick for you, that it will be helpful for you, and that it may make things easier for you so that the kingdom online might grow. Okay, having said that, tip number 1. Are you ready? Great. Tip number 1 is kind of a bit of a catch-all one. There's a bit in here. But number 1, add Sally Salvos. If you're a Facebook page administrator or owner or whatever within the Salvation Army core life, add Sally Salvos as an administrator to your page. Yeah? Does anyone here, hands up if you manage a Salvation Army Facebook group or Facebook page? Great. Now, I won't ask if you've heard of Sally Salvos or if you've added Sally Salvos, but I am now telling you, do it, it's great. Yeah? Sally Salvos is actually Cameron Wood, right? He's a guy who sits in his office in Sydney. Actually, I think he's in Sydney. Anyway, I've only met him on Teams. But anyway, he's in Sydney. Some of his team are in Melbourne, some of his team are elsewhere around the country, but he is particularly responsible for monitoring core-based Facebook pages and groups. And this is brilliant. He is a brilliant, brilliant backup. I had a call from an area officer about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they had noticed someone had reported to them a really disturbing comment that someone had made on a core Facebook page that was part of their area. The problem was the core officer, the manager and the admin person of the page wasn't present, and the AO was freaking out. And they didn't know what to do. So they called me. And I said, well, call Cameron. Get a hold of Sally Salvos. Now, fortunately, that core officer, they were away on leave or something. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. They weren't around. And they managed to get onto Sally Salvos, to Cameron. And Cameron was able to, because they'd added Cameron as an admin, Cameron was able to get in there, remove the comment, and ban that user. And of course then handed it all back over, gave a report to the core officer when they came back. See, the problem with Facebook isn't generally what you're going to post to your page. The problem with Facebook is most likely going to come from the people who are commenting. Sometimes something you say will be deliberately misconstrued, deliberately misunderstood, and miscommunicated. So having an extra set of professional eyes on your page is really helpful. If we are going to be Jesus-centered online community, we want all the help we can get to make our pages safe, welcoming, and loving. So, add Sally Salva. This would also be a good time to remind you to set a little bit of time aside each week to run your eyes over the comments that crop up on your page. I don't know whether you deliberately have time set aside to do that, but it's a good little thing to think about doing. The other thing is Cameron and the rest of his team have a Facebook group that they set up for core social media managers. Now, if that's you and you're not part of the core social media managers group, send me a message on Facebook. I am Phil Inglis, for those of you who didn't get it up at the beginning. Send me a message and I'll invite you. Cameron and his team are fantastic. They give you lots of resources and things, and you can even ask them what you should do about this comment, or what does this comment mean? Is this a mean comment? Is it not a mean comment? Because sometimes things are written in such cryptic kind of terms. They're memeified to the point where you don't understand what they're trying to say. So sometimes in this group, it's a good way to just to say, look, is this bad? Is this good? What does this comment mean? And things like that. They're a great help. These are the guys who also monitor the Salvation Army's Facebook and things like that. They are well and truly good at dealing with complaints and criticism and downright toxic people every day. So if you've got any troubles, and will have any troubles, they are well experienced and really, really good resource to help. The final thing I want to say about the Salvation Army territory PR type people is to add, if you've got a page, to add My Salvos, to follow others, and to follow the Salvation Army national page. What this does is it increases the web of interconnected core sites. And it increases so we're kind of doing what we can to manipulate Facebook's algorithm here. But by adding us all together, increasing the web of interconnected sites, it increases the chance that your post will be seen on other people's walls. That other people will be notified of things that you post, yeah? Because we're a bigger block of people. Okay, so that's tip number 1. I think that's a lot in one tip. Tip number 2, be careful with copyright and privacy. Yeah? This is not a good post. Don't do that. A few people are giggling as they get it. Oh, I should read that. So being careful with copyright. Many of you who've dabbled in live streaming and posting videos to Facebook may have come across copyright issues. Both Facebook and YouTube have automatic algorithms that will, if they detect copyrighted music or video in your post, they will mute it or take it down. So you need to be very, very careful. On top of that, there are legal considerations by being careful about your copyright. This is a whole minefield. Even if you own the rights to distribute and publish on Facebook, Facebook's algorithm doesn't ask you whether you have permission. It'll take it down anyway. So my preference, my recommendation is to stream to YouTube and post a link to that YouTube stream onto your Facebook group. YouTube still does have the same automated system, but it won't take your video down instantly. It will wait till you finish your meeting, and then it'll take it down. But at least you get the whole meeting in there, and then you can then go into YouTube and say, actually, no, I own the rights to that, and they can restore it and put it back, which you can't necessarily do with Facebook. So that's that. If you are looking for free music to use at the backgrounds of some of your YouTube clips and videos and things, I've put it on your handout sheet there in a tip down or two, freemusicarchive.org. Great website for free music. So that's be careful with copyright. Be careful with privacy. Make sure that you have written permission to use someone's name, photo, or story. You can end up threatened with litigation. A few years ago, we had someone on our team who was really super keen at taking selfies with random people on the street and posting little stories about them, and they weren't so good at getting written permission, and we ended up in a little bit of trouble. So make sure that you have written permission. It doesn't have to be a full talent release form, but at least make sure you've got written permission to say, I can use this in this way. If you have any questions about copyright, please send me a message or write the name down of Brianna Wheeler, who is our territorial copyright licensing genius. Brianna Wheeler. She can answer all of your questions, and she's going to love hearing from all of you now. I didn't even warn her I was going to do that. Oh, there you go. Brianna Wheeler, she's fantastic. She comes to the Salvation Army, I think, from Shout Music Publishing. She has great experience. Anyway, tip number 3, focus on photographs. Okay, so photos with posts get about 60 to 100% more traction on Facebook than text only. It has been said, I say that because this is a quote, and I don't know who the quote's from, but so it has been said that words are brain protein, images are brain candy. Photos grab attention better than text, but they need to be accompanied by text that matters. Just don't post random photos with no reason. So when it comes to photos, people are better than, I don't know, your teddy bear. If you're holding a home league, or whatever you call it now, a women's meeting during the week, or women's meeting with men, or whatever, and you do an event about teddy bears, don't just post photos of teddy bears, post photos of people with teddy bears. And hopefully they're smiling. Not the teddy bears, the people. Well, the teddy bears too, but the people. Yeah? It's called Facebook for a reason. It's about faces. And we're building community. And community online is a difficult thing because you're not physically in the same space, but you can see the same face. And that's important. So try and get photos of people smiling, and photos of groups of people as well. Groups of people are great, but here's another tip. Don't have too many people in the photograph. If you have a group photograph of 50 people, you can't see any faces. So I generally recommend that if you've got your Facebook is on your phone, right? You have a look at your phone. Generally 5 or 6 faces is all you're going to cram into that size photograph, yeah? So I recommend 4 or 5 people. Get them into a photograph, post that. The other advantage to that is you can then ask the people that you've put in that photograph to tag themselves. And again, it increases the web of connectedness that we have within our faith community and increases our Jesus representation across Facebook. Now, what sort of things? Let's have 2 minutes to break into question time again, a couple of minutes. What sort of things happen in your faith community? I know most of you probably meet once a week, maybe on a Sunday or another time during the week. You probably have some sort of community service operation, a doorways group or a food pantry or emergency services works and things. What other sorts of things that you do during the week that you could photograph? What sort of people could you add to your photograph and post about during the week? Yeah? You want to think through some of that? Just have that for a few minutes. Okay. That does stop rather abruptly. I like the music. Yeah. Isn't she great? Fantastic. I just wanted to pull out something from that last slide. Can we go back a slide, please? So the other thing I just wanted to say about photos is there's a few tricks that you can learn about how to frame, focus, and use perspective in the photographs that you shoot. This is an example of the use of the rule of thirds. This is a basic rule in psychology, whether you're using a camera, whether you're setting up a stage, whether you're videoing something. We generally like to draw a couple of lines like that on the thirds and then put our points of focus, the things that we're focusing on within that frame, within that shot, on those thirds, where those lines intersect. I did have another yellow square in the middle of his face, but I thought he's very, very nice looking, so we won't do that. But you can see how the cinematographer in this shot with our dinosaur trainer has placed him and the hand, which is the focus of the shot, on the thirds. If you use that, any photograph you take will be Actually, I genuinely think that if you look back over the photographs that you've taken in your phone, most of them, your brain and the way the psychology of the human mind works, you will generally tend towards to do that anyway. But there's the rules for you, if you like. Now, that brings me on to the next one, tip 4, graphic design, which is related because there are certain rules within graphic design, and I reckon 90% of you will have read this slide in the order that they say you'll read it. So if you read what that says, you'll read this first, you'll read this last, and then you'll read this one, and then you'll read this last. That's generally 90% of the way people will work, because this is the way your brain works, the way you've been trained and conditioned from schoolhood to now. This is how it works. There are rules around graphic design. There are rules around the way you use colour. There are rules around the way you frame things and position things and ratios of this to that and whatever else. Spending 5 minutes to an hour going through the basics of graphic design will lift your communication to a whole new level when it comes to Facebook and YouTube, particularly. When it comes to Instagram, follow the rule of thirds and only photograph coffee and food, and you'll be okay. When it comes to TikTok, it's not so much about framing, but it's about choreography. Now, no, I don't do TikTok dancing. That's funny. So the Territorial Mission Resource Department has started to release a lot of their resources as templates on a program platform called Canva. Has anyone heard of Canva? Yeah, great. So I've given you a link to Canva's Basic Design School. They have a little bit of a tutorial about the basic rules of graphic design. And I think, you know what, if you've got a spare, I don't know, about an hour or so, have a look through that, try a few things, see what you like, and work through some graphic design things. My extra rule on top of all of this is there are a number of fonts that you are never ever allowed to use, and that is Comic Sans and Papyrus. Those fonts are banned for all purposes, all time, forever and amen. Number 5, tip number 5. Repurpose stuff. Yeah, I know we're all busy. I know most of you spend 20 hours a week preparing your sermons. Yeah? Those of you who preach, this is what we were told in college, you're going to spend 20 hours a week preparing your sermon, and of course, I always do that. The thing is, we are time poor. We are time poor, and we are asked for a lot of output. You do create a lot of content as church leaders. There are sermons, there are songs, there are worship times, things said before and after the giving. There are small group materials that you write and produce. You spend a lot of time doing things. Repurpose it and use it online. If you are preaching a sermon, using the rule of thirds, set up an iPhone, film yourself. The only other tip that I have about filming yourself doing a sermon is try not to walk around too much. But also try and pull the camera up to about eye height. But you can get decent little things that'll hold your phone in the right spot for about $20 or whatever from Kmart. Just put it there, film yourself giving your sermon, and post it to YouTube. Or better yet, cut out a 1-minute summary, or the 2 to 3 minute conclusion. Or maybe you told a story, a sermon illustration of somebody did this or that or whatever. Tell that story. Cut that out of the sermon and put that up on TikTok or YouTube or Facebook or all three. Add content. Add Jesus-centered content. The internet needs it. And you're doing it. Let's put it there. If you need any help, want tips on how to put your iPhone on a stand or whatever, give me a yell. I'm more than happy. The intro that you wrote for Bible study, or post that to Facebook with a photograph, maybe of one of the Bible study groups or something else that's appropriate. What about the slideshows that you make for dedications and funerals and things like that? Celebrating the lives of people. Stick them online with permission and with proper copyrighted music, which means that the commercial music that you probably used in the middle of the funeral service, you might have to take that off the slideshow and add some from freemusicarchive.org. But put that up there. Celebrate a person's life and invite people to join with you in that celebration. And then, tip number 6. Invite people into conversations, not events. Yeah? Question marks are greater than periods. Yeah? Question marks are greater than full stops. No more invites to services, camps, and giving campaigns. PR didn't suggest this tip, by the way. No more invites. Although, I will point out, my wife was in plenty of Red Shield advertising this year, and a lot of the advertising is around about inviting people to partner with us, isn't it? Because it's about inviting people into something, not just telling people to do something. Yeah?
When you did do it online, like donate using your page, unfortunately once you did that, it just popped an onslaught of text messages from Red Shield.
From Bruce.
From Bruce. On text messaging and emails just constantly, and I just had to turn it off.
Yep.
Because I was not doing it.
Yeah, for those of you who are online, you may not have heard that comment, but the comment was that the problem was as soon as you did donate online, you became part of the Salvation Army's communication targeting scheme, and Bruce started to text you every minute of the day. But that being aside, let's focus on the fact that we are inviting people into conversations, not events. There has to be, look, as a preacher, I am very well aware that community is not built while I'm preaching a sermon. Yeah? Community is built when people are having tea and coffee and conversations and whinging over things after church, right? That's when community happens. Where are those spaces online? We need to invite people into conversations, not events. Those of you who are Corps Sergeant Majors will know, I'm sorry to tell you, no one is going to be converted by the announcements. Yeah? Sorry to have to tell you. Now, I'll just say something here. On Facebook, right, the general post, if you make a post on Facebook to your Facebook page, right, say you have a core page, that core page is followed by 500 people. Out of that 500 people, in general, the post you make, on average, will be shown, it will turn up in those people's notifications about 10% of the time. So every time you post to your Facebook page and you've got 500 followers, only about 50 of them are actually going to be notified and told that that post is there for them to come and look at. Now, that's just the way the Facebook algorithm works. But if you can get people to engage with your post, if people start liking it, if people start commenting, if people start sharing, Facebook says, oh, there's something something important here, something that people like to see, yeah? And it will start sharing it to more and more people. And this is also why it's important that you follow others in Salvos Australia, because what it will do is if it's shown it to everybody who follows your page, if it gets to 100% reach, it will then start showing it to people who follow the similar pages to you. Yeah? So people who maybe follow the Salvation Army, who are maybe from Gladstone and from Rockhampton, and they follow different groups and same groups there, they'll start seeing stuff from the page here as well as their page there. So the more engagement we can get with a post, the more community is built. Now, I will put a proviso. This can happen if you post something toxic and controversial. Let's not do it that way. But let's post things that engage people. We've spent 2 minutes asking the question, thinking through the message you heard or preached last week. Can you think of a question that would draw someone into a conversation around that topic? Let's just spend 2 minutes before we finalise with the last two. Okay. Sorry, we are running short of time. You've got the, I'll hand out the sheet that's got all the questions on it. You can talk about these over tea and coffee in a minute. All the questions that you missed and had something to share about. But point number 7 is don't be an oversharer. Don't be an oversharer. Some platforms reward content creators for posting every second. That'd be Twitter. But if you post too often on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and others, it will actually reduce the amount of exposure your post gets. General wisdom, now no one knows exactly what the Facebook algorithm is, but the general wisdom among media and communications and marketing people is that you post 2 to 3 times a week on Facebook if you want the most amount of exposure. Yeah, so 2 to 3 times a week. 5 to 6 times a week if you're posting to Instagram, 5 to 6 times a second if you're posting to Twitter, it doesn't really matter. YouTube, 3 or 4 times a week as well. Yeah? So we limit the amount of stuff that we post and we make it matter as best we can. That's why all the other tips are important. Asking questions, posting photos, good graphic design. Also, if you try and if you are going to post only a few times each week, try and post at the same time. So 7 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday morning, post at the same time every week. Commit to it. Be regular. Be predictable. It increases the chance that your post will be seen. Number 8 is to sanity check your posts before posting. iPhones are about to get the ability to withdraw and edit messages that you send. Don't need to use that. Sanity check before you post anything. Ask yourself the following questions. Is it inspirational? Is it encouraging? Is it engaging? Can people relate and can they respond? Is the content unique? Is it informative? Is it in line with our core beliefs? Are there any spelling or grammatical errors? Those of you who are looking at the sheet which has the tips on it, you are welcome to try and find all the grammatical errors because there are a lot. I've just found them. Does it isolate anybody? And the key question is it necessary? Is it necessary to post what you're about to post? Particularly if it's a comment. And the last two are related. The last two are related. Tip number 9, be locally focused. Don't become obsessed with international stardom. This pastor's sermon got a YouTube comment from a bot in Indonesia, and now his bio says he's an internationally acclaimed speaker. Don't become obsessed. Stay local. Your posts are not likely to be seen by the whole world. Remember, it's only likely to be 10% of the people who follow your page. Friends and followers of the page, subscribers to your channel, if it gets super popular, it may turn up in the feeds of people who follow similar pages, but generally not likely. So talk about local stuff. Be Australian, be a Queenslander, cheer for the Maroons if you have to. In sermons and talks, refer to local stories, COVID preparedness, or the hospital doing this or that, or struggles with the local council to control the bin chickens. I don't know, whatever it is, be local. But also, final tip, be globally minded. Just have it in the back of your mind that your post could go viral. It could be seen by the whole world. Make sure you do your sanity checks. Be careful with your jokes, your stories, your phrases. Be aware that the rest of the world sometimes has different words for things. You know, if you have a sermon illustration about thongs, just be aware that thongs are not footwear in the rest of the world. Try not to use language that is full of jargon and acronyms. Try not to use language people who are not Salvationists from Australia would understand. So there you go. There are the 10 tips from my friends across the army. Question number 5 will be one that's an ongoing question for you. What are the 1 or 2 things you might take away from this session and implement in developing your Jesus-centered online community? Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity of being here. Thank you for joining us. And I wish you all the best in an online blessed way.